Quick disclaimer, this is a direct sequel to the last video, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it before you start this one, and with that out of the way, let's get started. The Godfrey fight doesn't go too well, obviously, but after taking a break and coming back after a couple days, I get his rhythm down and get him on my first try back. After him is Morgott. I'm a little worried because I don't have Radon's armor set yet, and his damage is higher than the other bosses we've fought so far. However, with him being my favorite fight in the game, I know his moveset probably more than any other boss. On top of that, the fact he can bleed should make this a cakewalk. Or I could completely mess up the first attempt. Yeah. The second attempt does go better with me getting him to his second phase. I do die, but I think I have his first phase under control now. It takes a couple attempts to test out some spirit summons, but I decided to just do it on my own, because the summons I have currently don't do much of anything to his health bar. On my fifth attempt, he goes down after I absolutely obliterate the last 20% of his health bar with bleed. It's around this point in the run when I start getting a sinking feeling. I've beaten this game before and I know it only gets harder from here. Morgott really didn't take me that long, but every boss after him is much, much worse. I'm still fighting through the bosses with relative ease apart from Godfrey, but I can't quite shake the feeling of what's to come. Anyways, the next boss up is Fire Giant. The run through the Mountain of the Giants is easy enough, the hardest part being remembering which way to go and not dying along the way. There's not too much to say about it, but I did pick up the Smithing Stone Miner's Bell Bearing level 3 along the way. With that, I leveled up my Hook Claws to a plus 20, but the next Bell Bearing I can get to level it up fully is dropped by the Godskin Duos. I already know that's going to be a tough fight, but I do have a trick up my sleeve if things go south. Finally, I make it to Fire Giant. While I don't do a whole lot of damage, I do know that this boss can bleed. The first attempt goes nowhere, but surprisingly enough, it's like the cards fell into place on my second attempt. I must have gotten super unlucky on my first attempt because I beat him on my second. Needless to say, I was pretty surprised. Maybe this won't be too bad. But I'm not holding out for it. With the Erd Tree now ablaze, it's off to the Crumbling Farum Azula now. Apart from finding some Smithing Stone level 7 and 8, there's not really a lot I can do here for further upgrades. I do kill the first dragon that attacks you for the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. Before I fight the Godskin Duo though, I decided to pay an old friend a visit and put him in his place. I'm talking about Radon. Surely by now I will be able to kill him. But at this point I decided he's not worth killing all of the way. From the hell he gave me earlier in this run and in my last, I decided to give him a bit of cheese. Even without this cheese, I definitely would have killed him on my own, but I figured this would have been more satisfying. All you have to do is wait for him to get to his second phase, shoot into the air, and then sit on this nice little ledge and watch the action. With the beast himself now dead, I head over to the Round Table Hold in order to purchase his armor. I'm not able to wear his armor just yet, but I make do with other pieces of armor I have. Now, back to Azula. The Godskin Duo is next up on the chopping block. While exploring, I happened upon a gray sign right next to the boss arena that I didn't even know existed, so that's cool. While I'm hesitant to go in without the summon, I decide to give it my all and try it out. Needless to say, with this boss fight being the way it is, and me needing to be so close and personal with them, it doesn't go well. On the next attempt, the moment I'm in the boss arena, I'm getting a face full of spirit fire. That attempt goes a bit better, but it's still apparent this isn't going to be easy. So, to cut down on the grind, I summoned. Say what you will about this run being invalidated because I summoned, but I don't really care. This is the trick up my sleeve, and even while fighting alongside him as much as I could, we almost didn't make it. I know these bosses are weak to sleep, so you could do the same thing with those instead, but I decided just to summon. Also, the attack where the Godskin Duo is rolling, I am convinced doesn't stop unless it hits you. Like, just watch this. Just absolutely doesn't hold back. With these two down, I now have the next bell bearing in hand, and Malakath is next. Before we go any further, I need to confess something. Without realizing, my OBS setup was detecting the sounds going to my headphones instead of the sound coming out of my monitor for gameplay noises. During the next few boss fights, there were times I unplugged my headset to listen to music. I did that so the music wouldn't show up in the recording, and I'd be able to hear the music through my monitor to still be able to hear what was going on. However, with my headset being unplugged, those parts of the boss fights are muted. So to counteract this, the gameplay from now on will be muted. Sorry for the inconvenience, but let's continue the video. On my way over to Malakath, I grabbed the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman +2 and upgraded my Hurt Claws to a +25. Right before his boss fight, there is a Dragoric Tree Sentinel. At this point, I figured he'd kinda be a waste of time, cause surely I won't spend too long on Malakath, right? You know, I think I have a bad feeling about this. I knew right off the bat that there wasn't any way I could win this fight without a summon. The only problem is all of my summons are still the base level. Surely that bad feeling is just a hunch, and the jellyfish will be able to hold its own. Turns out not quite. With the jellyfish being at her base level, she wasn't even able to take 3 hits without dying. So if I'm gonna win this, I either need to upgrade her or find a better one. After a bit of farming, I decided it might be better to just go with the Mimic Tier Ashes instead. Granted, this summon can be pretty overpowered, but believe me when I tell you, it's not in this case. On my way to the Mimic Tier's boss fight, I pick up any Ghost Glove Wart I can find in order to upgrade the Mimic once I actually get it. I also decided that while fighting my Mimic, I wasn't going to heal unless he healed, and even with him literally being me, he was a complete pushover. I also used the Silver Tier Mask that he drops for the boost in Arcane, because if you didn't know, how much bleed damage you do is dependent on your Arcane level, for whatever reason. After that, it's a short run to where the Mimic Tiers are, and then I go and upgrade them to a +4. Now with a +4 Mimic in my back pocket, I decide to go and fight Malakath again. Theoretically, with both me and the Mimic doing bleed damage towards a boss that can be bled, this shouldn't pose too much of a threat. Or it could. That could happen as well. It takes a couple tries before the boss enters his second phase, and it's at this point it's abundantly clear how little I know about this boss. The next several attempts all end pretty shortly into his second phase. With needing to be so close to him at times, I found it difficult to find attack windows and would just go ham on the dude, hoping to do enough damage to kill him. But I never did. One thing I did learn though, was if my Mimic was still alive by the second phase, it would go a lot smoother than if he wasn't. Obviously, looking back on it. It wasn't until upwards of 3 hours worth of attempts that I started to get his patterns down. It was around this point that I realized my best bet for killing this man was to upgrade my Mimic. There was one slight issue with that. With Ghost Glove Wart being decently rare around the world, there wasn't many places I could go in order to get the higher level ones. So instead of going to a straight +10, I settled for a +6. I had one attempt going quite well. My Mimic made it to the second half, but died when the boss was roughly 25% health. Surely I was gonna be able to do this, right? I had been fighting for the last few hours at this point, and there was no way I could mess this up because I'm so close. And I didn't. With virtually no luck and a ton of skill, I took down Malakath. With him down and the Erd Tree ablaze, it's time to head back to the capital. The next boss up is Gideon, and I don't really know what to say about him. He's weak to bleed, and I was just so out of it from the Malakath boss fight, I just let my Mimic kill him. In the long run, he isn't even worth killing yourself. Now with that pebble out of the road, now to fight the real flesh and blood Godfrey. From all of the hell this man put me through in his spiritual form, his first phase is nothing to me. It's mostly the exact same as when you fight him earlier on in the game, except there's a couple more attacks that are more than overly telegraphed. Now his second phase is a lot scarier. His second phase is quite flashy and daunting, and for the first couple attempts, I didn't know what to do. I have to be within arm's reach of the man at all times, and most of his attacks are grabs, so it's not a very good combination. Once again, I saw a common theme with him, much like with Malakath. If my Mimic made it to the second phase of the fight, it went a lot smoother. But the hard part is keeping him alive after the second phase begins. Remember how I said the Mimic isn't that overpowered? It really applies to these last couple fights. While any player would see an attack coming and try to get out of the way, the Mimic's more likely to just slowly walk towards it. This counts for all attacks, whether it's a simple swipe of its axe, or a devastating grab. So with this fight, instead of my Mimic keeping me alive, I need to keep him alive. I'd say maybe on my 5th or so attempt, me and my Mimic were lucky enough to keep each other alive long enough to get well into a second phase. Things were going well, but nothing too promising. At one point, both him and my Mimic were incredibly low. I knew if my Mimic died, I wasn't going to win this, but thankfully he hadn't quite... Oh, what the fuck? Alright, bye. Yes, he's dead. Not even about to lie, that was 100% luck, and I don't quite know what happened there. Anyways, let's continue. The next fight up is Radagon, and I'm gonna be straight with you. This fight broke me down. No matter how many times I threw myself at him, no matter how I fought with my Mimic, I was unable to kill Radagon. At this point in the run, I was beyond close to giving up. Even with plus 25 hook claws and a plus 6 Mimic, I was lucky to put a dent into his health bar, let alone kill him. There was only one attempt that I even remotely got close to it. But even if I had killed him, would I have beaten Elden Beast, or would he have rolled me instantly? At this point, it was a question I didn't want answered. After a couple hours of attempts, with majority of them not even getting to half health, I had given up. I didn't want to waste hours and hours of my time fighting a single boss only for the next one to potentially one-shot me. So I gave up and went to bed. But, if you think that's the end of this story, you're dead wrong. I knew there were things in this world that could help me, from talismans to incantations. There had to be something to help me. So I set out looking. First on my list was a better Mimic. I knew up to a level 7 Ghost Glovewort was obtainable in the world without completing any questlines. A problem arose whenever I was looking for 8 and 9, but that's something we can deal with later. The Great Ghost Glovewort was easy enough to find, but the other two were more difficult. According to the wiki, there were only a few places in the world to find them, with most being in the Moog Palace, so now to fight through Whiteface's questline. However, there is a little issue with that. The way the questline works is in order to progress through it, you need to invade 3 people. These invasions can either be successful or failures, it doesn't matter. What does matter is the invasion part. The way the game handles invasions is based on your current level and the highest level weapon you own. You can probably see where this is going. In order for me to invade people, I need to find people who are close to level 92 that used a plus 25 hook claw. Needless to say, this is like finding a needle in a haystack and was a dead end. However, while I was trying to find a talisman, I found the unthinkable. Despite the wiki not actually mentioning it, I found a level 8 Ghost Glovewort in the Lindell Catacombs. This solidified that I could get a plus 10 Mimic without going to the Hylic Tree or even Moog's Palace. Now all I needed to do was find a level 9 Ghost Glovewort, which thankfully, according to the wiki, one can be found in the Giant Conquering Hero's Cave. Now that I had a plus 10 Mimic, I needed some talismans. The 2 that I went with are the Hylic Talisman +1 and the PEARLDRAKE Talisman +1. These talismans both boost my holy damage negation and all non-physical holy damage negation. Then for the final thing, Divine Fortification, an incantation that temporarily boosts holy damage negation as well. Now with all of that, I could finally beat that fucker into the ground. And as I predicted, Radagon becomes a mere speed bump in the way of me and the Elden Beast. It's kinda crazy how much these few items helped out. I'd say it cut his damage in half, at least for his holy attacks, that is. Finally, it's time to fight the Elden Beast. Overall, the fight goes, well, better than I could have expected. He's still pretty ruthless with his attacks, but all of them have pretty good windows of time to see what's coming, and it's not half bad. The only real issue I see is how little damage I'm dealing to him. It's not the worst in the world, but it's not great, and with how much he swims around, I'm not able to get off very many hits, before he is getting away from me. However, with all these boosts and buffs, the Elden Beast still takes me over an hour's worth of tries in order to finally take down. So what are my thoughts on this run? Just don't do it. It's not half bad once you get going and can be satisfying, but I don't think it's worth it. Unless you like smelling each and every boss's ass crack, just save yourself the time and do something else in the game. As for difficulty though, all major roadblocks had ways around them, so I don't think it was too bad in the long run. You just had to find those ways in order to keep progressing. With that, I do hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.